My name is Carl Briggs. I'm a clinical associate professor in the Kelley School of Business, and I direct the Supply Chain and Global Management Academy. Today I'm here with Mark Barbato to talk about corporate partnerships. We've been very fortunate in the Global Experience and Supply Chain and Global Management Academies to have had a wonderful opportunity to work with corporations. We'd like to share some of that with you today. The primary vehicle for this extended student engagement with our corporate partners has started with an advisory board and grown from there. Mark Barbato, who has for a number of years led Lilly in alliance management, has now retired, which is kind of funny to say retired, given all the things you've been doing in your retirement, Mark. But in that time, Mark has found time to lead our corporate advisory board and to engage students on many levels. And Mark, I want to thank you for your time. And if you would, tell us just a little bit about how an advisory board can work and how you've seen it work and how you think it may provide some opportunities for students and faculty alike.
Thank you, Carl. It's always a pleasure to be back on campus. It's always fun to be around both students and faculty. And as Carl said, I've been in here for the last decade really working quite closely with Carl and other professors on a variety of vehicles. Let's talk about one of those vehicles right now, and that's the advisory board that Carl mentioned. You may call it corporate partners, may call it advisory boards. There's a lot of terminology. It's one vehicle, and we'll get into some other vehicles here in a bit. But first of all, the one that I've been involved in here involves a number of executives. These executives represent a number of industries, so that's the beauty of that, and they have varied functional expertise. Some of us come out of sales and marketing, some come out of HR, some come out of distribution and operations, some out of manufacturing. And then I think the other fourth point I'd like to really underscore is they bring a global perspective. Many of us have had international experiences as well as U.S. experiences, and those international experiences go around the globe. And so there's a lot that can be brought to the table from the executives that you start to invite to campus.
And you know, Mark, there's a big difference between having students read about a global experience and actually being able to bring someone in who has experienced that and led businesses in that experience. I know that you have led several global teams in product development, I think in commercialization as well.
Absolutely. And as Carl said, I've been fortunate in my experience in the pharmaceutical industry to bring 2 products to market on a global basis. But prior to that, what set that up was the years I spent in Europe leading our marketing efforts and introduction of new products. So on the ground time with a number of countries and a number of introductions, and then staying in global roles as I moved back to corporate headquarters, whether it was pricing or, as we've talked about here, with bringing products to market, which involved everything from registration to commercial development. Let me comment that, and I'm not unique in this. The other folks I just wanted to share with you, let me just show you one more slide on advisory boards, because I think the names on this speak for themselves. These are the quality of the companies that we were able to get here, at least for this particular group. Now, there are other advisory boards and partnerships that the Kelley School has. These are the ones that are working with Carl here in particular, and you can see the names are very familiar to most people, although I suspect there's a few surprises or names that aren't, because there are some smaller and medium-sized companies as well, as well as some huge multinationals, some that are U.S. based, you'll notice on there, and some that are non-U.S. based. And so again, a lot of perspectives can be brought to the table by working with executives from a variety of companies.
So, Mark, one of the first questions that came to my mind, I guess, before we started doing this kind of work and before we had that kind of support is, what do you see as the benefit that the students get out of this?
I think it's a great question, Carl, because I think if a university is going to get involved with corporations and with their executives, there's a couple perspectives you have to consider. What's in it for the students? What's in it for the faculty? Because it's going to take time, but there should be huge benefits and a huge return. I think there's a number of points, and let me refer here to a few of them. First of all, you get coaching and mentoring with executives. Many of us become engaged on an individual basis with more than one student, actually, and
Right.
the beauty of the students is they can get more than one mentor. They can get different perspectives, so we certainly don't restrict them. In fact, as you've been a great leader, you've actually encouraged them to contact more than one of us,
Right.
because we all come at this a little bit differently. I think it sets the students up to network and for professional development. Many of the executives will come down either themselves and or bring some of their colleagues to help do mock interviews for the students to help them become better prepared for an internship interview or eventually a job interview.
Absolutely.
The other things for the students you'll get out of it is real life casework. And I think that covers a huge number of opportunities. First of all, in length of time, as you know, we do some 1 week ones.
Yep.
We do some semester long ones. That was one I was personally involved in. And we did, with a group of students a few years ago, we did a case that involved Latin America. And so got them involved on something outside of the U.S. We had some this was in the MBA program who were from Latin America, and they participated all semester long on that one. They get to interact with corporate executives and in some cases opportunity to affect corporate plans. And I'll speak to that one in particular about the case I was involved, because this was a marketing team that was looking to how they were going to use consumer advertising in certain South American markets. So that was it was very real work, of course, and it was something that the team wanted input on. Also, there are internships. We're all familiar with internships, in essence, living case studies. Sometimes they're over quarter breaks, but most often in the summer, and executives can point in that direction or help the students get those. Guest lectures is probably the easiest way, and sometimes a point of entry. Executives come down. And then I think there's also support and coaching for the job search. While I may not be able to offer the job itself, I can certainly help the individual, point them, talk about companies to pursue, talk about some other opportunities. So I think for the students, there's a huge payback, if you will, by having the university involved with corporations.
And once we had some experience doing this, Mark, I will tell you that the feedback that I consistently get from students is how valuable this relationship is. It's kind of funny. I've discussed this with some of my faculty colleagues. You and I can go into a room with, say, MBAs, and we can say the same thing, give the same piece of advice. Students hear it very differently when it comes from a corporate partner, and that means that there is an opportunity, a teaching moment for students that really we can't replicate with just faculty, and that speaks to the importance of the partnership, but it also speaks to what students get out of this experience. Now, sure,
Carl,
sure.
if I might just stop you and add one other thing, and I think one thing that we probably don't track very well, but we also get is a longitudinal relationship. Because I've got a couple that I still correspond with. So while sometimes we think of that as an active process when they're here on campus, at least in some cases, not 100%, but students have maintained relationships with those mentors. And I've got one on the West Coast right now that we correspond with. He came back to me, if you will, because he noticed that I had moved to a startup firm after retiring from my major employer of 35 years. He was starting a startup business while working for a major company. And so we have now some startup discussions that we have about how we're finding funding, how we're marketing our startups, things like that. So I think there's a longitudinal aspect that also can arise, again, a huge benefit for the students.
Absolutely. There's another piece of this that you alluded to earlier, and that is what's in this for the faculty, because as you mentioned, there's some cost associated with this. There's the time to identify, to reach out, to bring people in. What do you think is the benefit for faculty in this, Mark?
Let me try and answer that to a faculty person here, but
I'll grade your answer.
But from others I've talked to, I think the first thing is the faculty gets to network with industry leaders. They get to build their own personal networking. I mean, we all talk about networking these days, and we have a variety of tools to help us. We can talk about social networks, but this is really about building your networking capabilities as a faculty member, about getting perspectives from those industry leaders. So you're going to build your own network. You're going to gain perspectives. It allows you to reach in perhaps a little deeper for your own classroom use. And then I think the other huge benefit to them is access to case opportunities that they can either there for actual ones working And in some cases, and again, I've been personally involved, where professors have been of a mindset to actually write up the case and submit it to textbooks and all. So there's a couple of huge opportunities for faculty if they're inclined to do that. But at the very least, gaining perspectives from industry leaders and networking opportunities for themselves, I would think would be huge benefits.
I would say that's a fairly complete answer, Mark. There's a couple of points I would add to that. That one would be there's potentially some real research opportunities here, not just
Yes.
writing up cases, but actually having access to problems that can turn into articles and can become the sort of product that professionals that professors produce. I think that's one. Another one is that there are this networking opportunity is something that I wouldn't want to underestimate. We have one faculty member who found himself in a part of the world that was undergoing a military junta, and the airports were closed. And he would probably have spent an additional 2 or 3 weeks had it not been for the help of a board member who just happened to know how to get transportation to another location and get out of the place he was in.
I guess you just never know how those relationships will help you.
Absolutely right. So there's a lot in this for faculty. Now, this is the question, Mark, that I think you are uniquely prepared to answer. We've talked about what's in it for students. We've talked about what's in it for faculty. But in order for this to happen, there has to be something in it for the company, right?
Absolutely. We're all busy, whether we're on campus or at our corporation. And I think when I put my company hat on, or keep my company hat on, and why executives should get involved, one is simply our chance to influence, to talk about our company, to talk about a product strategy, to get our name out there. Sometimes we've had changes in corporate strategy, and this is one more venue to explain that strategy and to get others' perspective. It gives us a chance to network with both faculty and students. Again, those are two-way streets sometimes when I said things like casework and all. Sometimes we need work to be done, and students are a wonderful pool, and or faculty as well, to help guide some of those projects. So gaining others' perspectives on those case studies, on those summer internships, are key for corporations. At least larger corporations, we keep looking at those vehicles. And then I think all important to firms these days are finding really good people. So we want to keep our campus visibility high for recruiting. I think it's important we have longer term relationships because we always need good people. Even as we look at today's times and how employers are facing employment and all, we're hiring. All corporations are hiring. You've got to keep bringing new employees into the fold, and there's probably no finer place than our major universities and the students they produce.
Very good. So, on the whole, you would say this is a really valuable experience for all of the parties.
I think so, absolutely. I, as you mentioned from some of the faculty, I think they've commented to me on what they get out of it, and I can tell you when I talk to my fellow peers, if you will, on the advisory board, they enjoy it very much. They enjoy the exposure they get to the faculty, the conversations they have with the faculty, and the tips they learn. And as well as then involving with the students, and then the work that they do at those corporations in case studies and internships, and eventually as employees.
Yes, and I can tell you that the feedback from the students is also very, very clear about how valuable this is to them. Well, Mark, if there's value all the way around for all the participants, I think the question we have to talk about for just a minute here is how do you get it started? How do you do it?
Well, I'm not sure who the author was, but somebody once said every journey starts with that first step, or something like that. And I think the first thing is you need to initiate a personal relationship. You need to invite somebody to campus. So you can, and maybe a relationship it may be somebody who can provide that introduction.
Okay.
If you don't know them directly, maybe somebody can give you a hand. But ask them to come down to give a guest lecture. Most of us are flattered when we're asked if we can find a topic of mutual interest and can fit it into our schedules. But we'd like to, those who have moved into the management and executive ranks are used to being in front of groups. They don't mind doing this. They want something, a topic that's of interest to them as well. I think that then can, so getting to know them on a personal basis. Now, you may set that up if you don't know them at all first. You may have a personal meeting. You may meet them for lunch, coffee, dinner, any of the social opportunities like that. But I would say getting them on campus and having them interact with the students. And then I think you need to have this, develop an understanding of each other's needs. You've got to, meet with that individual. They've got to meet with the professors. They need to know about the curriculum. Most of us have been out of school for a while, so
Right.
we need to kind of get oriented as to what, in this case, what's going on at the Kelley School of Business. What should I be aware of, so that as we talk, we can find something of mutual agreement here.
Right.
If there are academies or institutes or whatever other bodies that the school may have put together, it's helpful if we understand that. So again, we're looking for a nice match as to where either I can, or you may have needs that I can perhaps bring another executive from my firm into it, or from another firm in. And then at the same time, you can appreciate any goals or needs that we have. What would we like to get out of it? Where would we like to work? Would we be more at this time perhaps marketing oriented, or finance oriented, or operations oriented, so we can help direct that? Because again, we're all trying to find things that at the end it clearly is a win-win. And then I think, as these relationships build, you collaboratively create opportunities. And we've referred to a number of these already in our comments today, Carl. Webinars we've done, as you and I have done personally a few times now.
Yes.
A really nice way in today's technology to take advantage of it, particularly when the executive lives in a different city, is to use today's technology to your advantage in the comfort of home or a study to make a presentation in an evening for many of the online opportunities. Case studies we've talked about lectures. There are panel discussions where you want to bring a series of executives in front of a particular group for a class. We've mentioned advisory boards, case competitions. You need judges, and oftentimes the school needs to reach out to the executive community for judges for those. I've mentioned the networking opportunities with faculty and our students. And here, one thing we bring other executives for our industry connection days. So for a variety of us can come down and interact with students, so they can, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's marketing, whether it's finance, whether it's operations, they can just simply ask questions. Yeah. And so we do that a lot. So just get out there and start it, and then keep on, look for what's going to happen next.
What you've described here, Mark, is really an engagement continuum that can begin with just an initial personal contact, and I would say that there may be a pool of possible connections would include your alumni base. So there may be maybe your development office or maybe your alumni office might help you identify. Then there's probably some companies that are close by. But over time, what you're describing here is identifying, making the connections, and really deepening those connections. So from the entry point of a guest lecture, or maybe just an initial lunch, all the way to the kind of work that you're doing right now with helping to run a large corporate advisory board, where there's a mentorship program and case studies and lots of activity going on. And what I would say is, no matter where you are, no matter where a professor is in that continuum, there's always real opportunity in taking it just a little further. And really deepening those relationships.
Absolutely, and I just want to underscore the point you mentioned there about using your alumni office. Every one of your institutions has very successful alumni, and you can use alumni with all kinds of backgrounds, and sometimes it's appropriate to have younger alumni there, where you're trying to show people who are in their earlier parts of their careers being successful. Sometimes it's older alumni. They may have more time. They may be more. There's another mantra about learn, earn, and return. And so this may be the return opportunity for many of us at whatever age we're at to give something back. But I think you're right. There's that whole continuum there. You don't have to participate in all of it. You might skip a step or two, but I think all of that evolves over time. And it's an iterative process. You do something, you see where it goes, you see what you need, and I think those conversations will allow you to not only your alumni, but to bring other people in. Again, all for the betterment, really, of the students and the faculty.
Absolutely. So this is a process of really putting your university as sort of the best face forward, and really selling.
Absolutely. I'm a salesman at heart myself. I started in sales, and I would say to the faculty, remember, you are selling. If you've never ever thought of that self in your role, you're selling yourself, you're selling your university, and you're selling the capabilities of your faculty and students. You're in front of a classroom, you've been in front of students, so you know what that's all about anyway. Just keep on doing it, just do it with executives now.
Very good. Mark, I would say there's one more thing, And that is, if you want to have this kind of impact and build this kind of deep experience, you need to find a handful of executives that have a real passion and commitment to your students and to the educational experience of students. And I feel quite fortunate in that I believe we found that in you and a core group of faculty. And I think today's evidence of that. So Mark, thank you again for your time, and it's a pleasure being here with you.
Well, Carl, thank you. Always a pleasure to be here with you, and as I said, always a pleasure to be back on campus.
Wonderful. Thanks. Thank you.